What does Rory need to do tonight, or do you wait till later on?
Yeah, we'll have to wait till later on. We'll have to wait till our last training session on Thursday. At this stage, it's looking pretty positive. He's never going to play last week, but he's come up a little bit quicker than what we first thought, which is pleasing. It'd be nice to get a little bit more experience in the side, and especially around the ball. So fingers crossed, but he's got to get through Thursday first.
Is he in pain? Do you know, or is he?
No, I don't think.
Limited in anything he can do?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's healed really well. He was marking and handballing there a week ago, so you really can't do that with a break if it's hurting. So he's come along really nicely.
Sorry, yeah. To clarify, I meant Sloan.
Sorry.
My apologies.
Rory.
So
there you
Rory
go.
Laird's covered.
That's Rory.
So
yeah.
Rory Laird's
the other Rory.
Sloaney, what does Sloaney need to do?
He's the same. He'll get some light running in today. The good thing is with Sloaney is when you finish a game, generally you get up the next week. So at the moment though, too, short break, 6-day turnaround. Just get some nice light running in today. Come out and have a kick on Thursday with the group, and we'll make the decision post training where he's at.
It seems like it could be an ongoing issue for him throughout the season. Do you weigh up the fact whether or not you want to rest him or not? He's early in the season. Does that ever come into consideration for you?
It probably does with older players and younger players. You get the real young players in and the older ones as well. Is there a chance to maybe give him a breather at some stage? But look, he's had a pretty good pre-season, Sloaney. He missed there a few weeks with COVID there, about a month ago as well. So in terms of training, no, he's keen to play and ready to go. We've just got to be mindful of taking any player into a game that's a little bit sore, because you can be exposed, and sometimes it does no one any good. We have got a 6-day turnaround, so if he doesn't play, he gets 14 days to our next game. But we won't take any risks with him, but if he's ready to go and puts his hand up, he'll be playing.
So I guess the significance of one showdown, but also being 0 and 2, that doesn't come to play any part in it?
No, not when you've got your captain, like we were saying before, with an injury. You don't want to take any risks, but when you've got a player who's played 250 odd games, they know their own body as well as anyone, and he knows the pressure and intensity that the game will be played at on Friday night, so he won't put his hand up if he's not right to go.
Do you expect him to, Scott?
I'm not sure yet. Yeah, we need to see him. We need to see how he goes running, and more importantly, twisting and turning on Thursday when he has a few kicks prior to the game on Friday.
What's the bigger test, tonight or Thursday for him?
I would think Thursday. Yeah, when you finish the game, like I said, he's finished the game. He'll get his straight line running in today. He feels up and about. He feels reasonably confident at this point, but that can change, or it can absolutely be consolidated when he gets out and he twists and turns, goes left and right, kicks over 50 metres. So we need to see those things before selection on Thursday, Arvo.
He's the skipper for a reason, but it's been a bit of a tumultuous start to this year for him with COVID, then the match tribunal, and now obviously he's got this niggling injury. How is he taking all of the pressure and I guess the spotlight on him?
No, I wouldn't have thought he would have thought any different to what he was 12 months ago. I think COVID's COVID. We all know we're going to get it at some stage, so we don't worry about that too much. The eye one went pretty quickly anyway. That went Sloaney's way as it should have. And this week's just a stock standard niggle that you get over your 12 to 14 years of playing AFL football. So I wouldn't have thought he feels like he's under pressure at all. He's just keen to get out. He just loves the battle. Big game Friday night. He wants to play. So hopefully he gets up.
Is a Rory Sloan at 90% better than someone else at 100 perhaps, Burnsy, maybe a younger player, or do you need someone?
Yeah, it depends. I guess it's will he put his hand up knowing that he can play the role that we want him to play? If he can do that, yeah, well then he's playing. So.
What's been the main focus of the youth game?
There was a bit of everything in that one. There were some things we did quite well. It's a frustrating game in the sense that inside 50 is nearly the same. We didn't capitalise on the scoreboard as much, and we probably let them get through us a little bit too easy, especially, and it's always been a strength of Collingwood over the years, their run and carrying their hands through their half-back area in midfield. Got a pretty powerful and explosive midfield group in Crisp and DeGoey and those blokes, and Grundy follows up so well. So it was always going to be a bit of a test. Unfortunately, it was probably halfway through the third. We were still very much in the game, but then they just put their foot on the accelerator and got those 3 or 4 quite quick goals, and we just couldn't catch up after that.
I guess the consistency from the first 2 games has been inconsistency, kind of skill errors. how do you address that?
In terms of the inconsistency with...
I guess, like with ball movement, how, you can play without first half against Fremantle and second, the
Yeah.
second half,
Well, I think we've got a pretty young group. It's not just skill. I mean, it's there, and we notice that, and that's frustrating for us watching at home or watching in the crowd. But there's a lot of areas around the ball that we need to get better at, and a little bit stronger, a little bit cleaner when we're over the ball, and that can take time. And there's a little bit of technique. There's a lot of training in that, and certainly when when teams get through, you've still got blokes like Butts and Murray that are only in their first or second year competing with generally some senior key forwards. But probably the hardest thing for us on the weekend is when you talk about where we're at in inconsistencies. At times that will come with youth, and you need to be patient. You've got to cop a few blows on the chin, but we've got to make decisions along the way. I guess the players who are going to be with us on the journey. That forward line on the weekend was like nearly 130 games between 8 blokes. It was nearly, I don't think that's ever been put out on the park before. And at the moment, with Tech's not there, there's no other experienced player really to go down there, and they're learning, they're getting better. But it's hard when you're a young bloke and you're surrounded by 5 other young blokes rather than being. Let's look at Logan McDonald up at Sydney. He's there, and it's the buddy show, and he's got Heaney around him, and it's different. So we just got to persevere and just keep working with the younger players.
How do you feel, I guess, your place, now compared to 12 months and taking away, being 0 and 2? How do you feel, I guess, your place with the younger room? Do you feel like you've improved from last year? Do you feel like
Yeah, I think the question, especially with the defenders, you ask, are you a better player than what you were 12 months ago? And we went through that the other day, and they are. They feel that they're a better player. Now it's about collectively us playing better as a team. There's no doubt about that, and we're still in our infancy in getting the style that we want consistently for 4 quarters. But there's a big thing such as shared experience, and that's why it's not just necessarily 26, 28-year-olds that have played 150, 200 games. They're generally the top 4 teams. It's the fact that they've played 6 to 8 years together with their teammate alongside them, and I've played 150 games with them, so I trust them. I know which way they turn, whether they turn left or right. I know whether they're going to win an aerial contest or, I played with Nathan Buckley, for instance. If he's in a 1v1, I'm getting over there as quick as I can because there's a fair chance he's winning that. So you just need to understand your teammates around you. And that, once again, and people get sick of it, but it does take time. But we're trying to accelerate that as quick as we possibly can.
Scott, do you think Riley still do enough in the twos to get back in the side?
Yeah, we obviously played at the same time, so we're in Melbourne. But all reports, he was quite solid, and he did quite well down there. But we've got a few blokes that are putting their hands up. Haitley's the one that's played some really good football over the last month. Nearly averaging 30 touches. He had a bit of OP all last year, which just hindered him a little bit. But he's moving quite freely. Berry was very, very good, and the boys are saying it's Worrell's best game, like Tex and McPherson and Laird, who are the players who went back and helped out. They said it was Worrell's best game they've seen him play at the club. So there's a lot of positives still underneath. But it's about getting the opportunities, I guess, and putting a bit of consistent footy together for not just 1 week, for probably 2, 3 or 4 weeks.
Sloan, you said yesterday that Riley has a bit to work on in the twos, particularly this week. Can you let us know what is he actually needing to work on here?
We've all got things to work on. There's just, look, at the end of the day, it was just probably Riley was just down on a little bit of confidence. There's been a bit of dialogue about round 1, and I understand that, but we've been training with boys for 3 or 4 months. We've played practice games. Riley didn't have COVID at all, so he played all the way through. He just needs to go down and get ball in his hands a bit more and just have that confidence and that aura about him. And just so when he comes back up to senior level, he's hungry and he wants to play and he doesn't want to give up that spot again. And he's got a bit of confidence to launch at the ball or hit packs hard, whatever it has to be. But he just needs a little bit of time at the moment back there, get his confidence, and he's going to be playing a lot more AFL games than SANFL games this year, and it's just a little learning curve for him at the moment, which happens to nearly every player who comes into an AFL system. And if you look at Joshy Kennedy, who I was at West Coast with early, I think he played 30 games in his first 3 years. Riley will be 30 at the end of this year, in 2 years, so it does take time. And I think Harry McKay had that good conversation post-game the other night, and it took him time as well. I think he was around the 30-game mark too in 3 years. It's not easy, especially for big fellas. We see Sam Walsh and those younger midfielders and Rochelle for us right now. They can step up straight away, but key position players can take a little bit more time. So we certainly have to be patient there.
junior a few more games in the two, Scott?
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're really pleased with his game last week. It was great that he got a sniff the week before, get in, feel the heat and intensity of another AFL game. But, you know, on his own accord, he basically said, geez, I was probably off a little bit in some ways. So he wanted to go back, and we were pretty keen for him to get some real full games at SANFL level. He'll be in the mix this week, but I think it's a bit like Riley. He needs just to put a block together, just to get some real confidence in his fitness and his body. But he's a quality player, and he's a bloke we're really looking forward to get back in when the time's right, when he's absolutely ready to go.
Well, sorry, what do you tell guys that haven't played in a showdown for Shelley and Saligo if he's involved, and a few of the younger players? I know Braden Cook debuted in a showdown last year.
Yeah.
What do you tell them ahead of Friday night?
Probably don't tell them too much, really. I mean, the big events obviously in the state, but you know, some of the heat we were put under last week against Collingwood was pretty intense, and it's just AFL footy. We build it up and we love it. Friday night, how good's that? We can go have dinner just beforehand or go out afterwards at the footy. So the atmosphere in the city is going to be fantastic. But in terms of when we get on the ground and step over the white line, it's just normal AFL football. The heat's on early, and if we want to be the team that's consistently playing good footy and playing finals football down the track, you've got to be able to perform for 4 quarters under this pressure. So it's a great test for those young players, and I hope they come off the ground with a huge smile on their face, going, "How good's that?" That's why I love AFL footy.
Is Port vulnerable? I mean, you've probably watched the Port Hawthorn game. Are they vulnerable?
The Port Hawthorn game was just a different game altogether. That was, I think even Sammy Mitchell said to kick 9 or 10 goals from D50 is nearly unheard of. And so it's a different. I don't go into that game too much. I haven't seen Port get scored against like that over the last 2 to 3 years. So to me, that was abnormal. They played a top team early, obviously round 1 as well. So we look at 0-2. That's all we look at, 0-2, 0-2. But at the same time, they're still building. They were probably up and going really early last year, 12 months ago. I think they're building a little bit throughout the season, or especially early for this 222 season. But in terms of vulnerable, no, they'll be breathing fire. They'll be ready to go. As like I said, we're absolutely loving the fact that this is going to be on early. This is going to separate the men from the boys, and she's bringing mouth guards. And I don't know if Will Smith will be out there, but there'll be a bit of slapping going on, I would have thought, at some stage.
As a defensive group, do you plan for Charlie Dixon to play, or do you kind of assume that he's going to come back? Yeah,
well, we haven't heard too much with that at this stage. Generally they're going to play the 3 tools anyway, so in terms of selection for us, it won't change. They'd have to make that decision with Charlie, whether they bring him in off not much match fitness. I've got no idea where he's at though. So to me right now, we'd be expecting the 3 tools that they played last week to play, but we'll wait for a little bit later in the week, and the team will be announced Thursday, and then we'll know a little bit more.
Do you have any players, staff, coaches in isolation?
A few staff are, at the moment.
Staff?
Yeah, no, not coaches, just more staff.
So no one that will affect the match day?
No coaches that will affect the match day. We just, like we said, COVID's coming. It's pretty hard, especially when you're obviously a little bit older and you've got your kids going through school, which a lot of coaches do and staff members do. It's pretty hard to avoid it. COVID is coming in your front door with the kids coming back from school with their school bags, so that'll happen. We just put up with it, we move on. There's things in place to cover.
In terms of players and anyone who's affecting the match day, everyone's clear?
I think so, yeah, it does. You set me up, you know something too. So I'm thinking, do I not know something here? No.
Do you feel like it's a bit lucky that you had the kind of outbreak in pre-season, seeing what West Coast went through again?
That was a wonderful effort by West Coast to compete like they did and not complain with what happens. As we said, COVID is COVID. You can't fight it. The only thing with the timing of when we got it, it would have been great if it was a couple of weeks earlier. Yeah. Because we come in round 1 with some boys with half a game, 3/4 of a game, where ideally you want them to get a couple of games under their belt before round 1. So we just probably had the edge off us a little bit going into the first game, but there's 22 games in the year. We want to make sure we're up and going, round 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, rather than put our eggs in all one basket and making sure we cherry ripe for round 1 and then falling off a little bit after that.
One of the guys that didn't go against the games in pre-season, Jordan Dawson, do you feel like he's probably more comfortable at half-back at the moment, or how do you see him?
Well, he's played some very good footy at half-back, but he's probably in All-Australian form the last 12 games last year off the wing, so he can play both. Like we know he can play half back, and we certainly know he can play wing. So we've got that option, but ideally we'd love him up around the ball a little bit more with his ball use, and he's obviously, even though he hasn't got huge games experience, I think he's only around 70 odd games experience. He's been around the AFL system for a while as too, which will help us out.
So that's the plan when he gets, I guess, 100% match fitness, having more around the ball.
The plan may be for last week and maybe for this week, but it might change from week to week. So,
how do you feel your younger midfield bodies will go against the Brownlow medalist and Travis Polk? And it's a bit of a gulf in experience and size. How do you combat that?
Yeah, I guess. Look, like with Lairdy coming back in, which we think will happen at this stage, there's a bit of experience. He's only small, he's not huge, and Crouchy's one of the strongest blokes over the footy as well, which is pretty handy in those situations. So when you go to the younger players, at this stage, Schoenberg's probably the skinnier, the younger mid coming through, but he's got different qualities that can really hurt opposition too when he's up on song. He's one of our players that can actually break away from contest and drive his legs. I thought Rochelle, we gave him the last quarter last week in the midfield, and he was very good in there as well. So we'll back the young fellas in, but we certainly need the senior players to be stepping up and playing pretty solid football for us.
So first bounce, who goes to Ollie?
Probably the closest bloke next to him, I suppose. There's a bloke called Travis Polk that's a pretty good player too. And
who goes to Travis Polk?
I'm not sure. There's Zach Butters might start in there as well. So this is the reality. When you're coming up against the top 4 team, there's good players everywhere. And they've obviously had players that have been in the system for a long time, and they've probably brought a few recruits in, whether it's free agency or trades, and they've got a few good kids they've drafted probably 4 or 5 years ago. So there's quality players in that team. So well, round 2. Yeah.
With Harry, I guess he's, just like I'm watching the games, his disposal efficiency seems to be a little bit down than it was last year. What do you think say to a young kid like that, when he's making great mistakes?
Yeah. Oh, look, you just with younger players, if no matter what mistake they're making, whether it's offense or defense or missing tackle, you just got to get as much time with them 1v1 and get the ball in their hands, show them vision, go through things. But then there's also the balance of just freshen up a bit too. Sometimes you might be trying too hard. Sometimes you feel the pressure. You might need a release. There's nothing wrong sometimes with telling a young player, look, I'm not doing any touch with you today. We're not going through vision. Let's just relax, come back in a couple of days' time, and we'll focus on the opposition and not necessarily make it about them, because no player goes out to deliberately make mistakes. So it's a learning curve for all, and you've just got to support them as much as you possibly can, and there's got to be that balance where you need to demand a little bit more as well.
Done, guys? One more. As a for Rory Laird, I mean, it must have been a frustrating start to the year. He wants to play round 1 last round, and there's been 2 losses for you guys. His round 1 is essentially this weekend, on Friday night in a showdown. Take us into his mind. What's he feeling going into a game like that?
Oh, he'd just be rapt to be playing and not running laps. That's what he would be happy with. But that's the interesting thing with injuries, where there may be injuries to your legs that stop you from actually getting out and running around, and that can put you back a little bit. That's when we talk about match conditioning. You might have to go back to the SNFL and get a few games. But when you've got someone like Lairdy who was in a really good nick before he hurt his hand, I think he's actually, he's got more of a top up with his running over the last 2 weeks. He's fit. He's ready to go. He's as fit as what he will be this year going into this game, and even Tex with the suspension, they're fit. They've been running. They've been doing everything. So it's not like you've missed 3 or 4 weeks with an ankle or a syndesmosis, or Tex has missed 6 weeks with a medial ligament or something like that. They've been out running and doing match sim, so they'll be right to go.
So is this a warning for Port then? Beware of Rory Laird.
No, well, he's a good player. I would hope that they'd be putting a bit of work into Rory as we would be into their better players.